Hello, my name is Erinc Hallacli. I'm a new junior group leader at Max Perutz lab and I started my lab in April 2024. In our lab, we are interested in Parkinson's disease. If you had a magical wand and if you could zoom into the brain of patients with Parkinson's disease, you will see something strange. A small protein slowly starts accumulating in these cells and start aggregating. This protein is called alpha-synuclein. In our lab, we are trying to understand how this protein functions and how its misfunction causes neuronal death. I like to think that our research is important because Parkinson's disease is the second most common neurodegenerative disease and there is no cure for this disease. So if we can contribute, however small, to the understanding of disease, then we would have achieved something. Alpha-synuclein, the protein I just mentioned, has a peculiar property. It binds transiently to cellular membranes. But when it's not binding to the membranes, we figured out that it binds to an RNA granule called processing bodies. So we like to think that alpha-synuclein has a dual life between membranes and processing bodies. So in the lab, we are trying to understand what determines this equilibrium that's between membranes and processing bodies. For this, we develop technologies to understand transient membrane protein interactions along with high throughput screens and structural biology and biochemistry and Orpheum tagging techniques. And for model organism, we use iPSC-derived neurons. When I wanted to be a molecular biologist, I think I was about like 12 years old when we had the Encyclopedia of Britannica at house and I decided to read about this molecule called DNA and I was hooked up. I couldn't let it go and I knew from that point on and I wanted to be a molecular biologist. I think the coolest thing about science is of course no doubt that it expands human knowledge. But I think more importantly it expands human imagination. I like to think that humans are basically evolved to be storytellers. We like stories and we have a rich inner imagination and science can fuel these stories almost infinitely. Just to give you an example, as we sit and talk at this moment, I am hosting trillions of microbes within myself and some molecules or some elements in my body that does important enzymatic reactions came from a supernova that happened billions of years ago. Most of my cells, and actually all of my cells, there are organelles called mitochondria that were living organisms independently billion years ago. What inspires me is my colleagues and the countless of other scientists whose paper I read and whom I talk in the meetings. And those are my greatest inspirations. I think in another universe or another time, if I weren't a scientist, I would definitely be a librarian because I'm fascinated by books and I love to be surrounded by books.